Breaking today. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle accused of leaking highly sensitive information about a private meeting with Buckingham Palace and representatives for King Charles, unbelievably, to the Mail on Sunday's editor-at-large Charlotte Griffiths, the same woman who Prince Harry was trying to destroy in court. Charlotte Griffiths has made these revelations in an astonishing new front-page article for today's Daily Mail, where she also reveals Prince Harry's latest drug shame, which involved pulling out some type of pill. She claims it may have been paracetamol, putting it on her tongue and saying, "Now I know I can trust you." This, by the way, was within seconds of meeting the then 27-year-old newspaper journalist. So Harry is in deep trouble on a whole load of matters. And he knows, because yesterday he tried to blame, and this was the GB News spin, he tried to blame soaring London temperatures and a heat wave as the reason why he snuck into the Chelsea hospital and was not pictured at all. Today he has broken cover, visiting the Birmingham Children's Hospital, where he is patron of the charity Well Child. He looked emotional as he hugged a nurse and engaged with the children. But of course, guess who hasn't showed up to support him? That ever-loving wife, Meghan Markle, who any time this shit hits the proverbial, hits the fan, seems to disappear. Of course, the big event happens at the Invictus 1 year to go countdown. If Meghan Markle leaves Prince Harry to do that on his own, I think you'll know there are now even more troubles within this marriage. But let me get to this astonishing revelation from Charlotte Griffiths, that this meeting, and it was a highly significant moment because it was a meeting between Tobin Andre, who is the King's most senior royal courtier on the communications side of things. Full disclosure, he actually used to be my boss when I worked at the Daily Mail, but he is an old Etonian and very, very close to the King. And he had this secret meeting, which was pictured by the Mail on Sunday, with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's then senior staff members, Meredith Maines and Liam Maguire, at a private members club close to Buckingham Palace. And everyone wanted to know, how on earth did they get these pictures? Who was leaking this sensitive information? And given that the information was leaked to Charlotte Griffiths, the thinking was, well, it couldn't be from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle because they're suing the woman. But Charlotte in the Daily Mail today has revealed that is indeed what happened. She wrote, "What is even more galling, given David Sherborne, that's Prince Harry's slippery lawyer and his line of attack, is that in the months leading up to my court appearance, Harry's circle had been very leaky indeed. I can now reveal that during the summer of 2025, a close advisor to Harry and Meghan had contacted me out of the blue and invited me to lunch at the Ivy restaurant in London. As a result of information given to me at that lunch meeting, I placed a series of stories in the Mail on Sunday that portrayed the couple in a positive light. This included a front-page article which ran in July, suggesting that Harry and Meghan were attempting to rebuild their relationship with King Charles. It revolved around the fact that Liam Maguire and Meredith Maines, Harry and Meghan's USPR chiefs, were to hold clear-the-air talks with the monarch's aide, Tobin Andre, in London. I was duly tipped off about the meeting, which was held at the Royal Overseas League near Clarence House. The attendees settled themselves on a balcony plainly visible from the public park below. The Mail on Sunday arranged for a photographer to capture the cosy but very embarrassing scene. In a development which speaks volumes for their integrity, sources close to the Sussexes then briefed the Daily Telegraph that they were very frustrated that the pictures of the Royal Overseas League gathering had ended up in the Mail on Sunday, suggesting, quite falsely, that the palace was responsible for a grotesque betrayal of trust. Now, just 6 months later, the prince was impugning my integrity while swearing that his people never leaked and that stories that ended up in my newspaper must have been obtained illegally. Rafe Hadel-Mankoo is a royal historian and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Oh my God, Rafe, this is actually so serious now. Because, you know, all of the talk all along in terms of this sort of rapprochement between Harry and King Charles has been based on an understanding that it must stay confidential, Rafe, that he must not continue to leak information. Now, I have reported, Rafe, time and again that he can't do that. Like when he met Charles at Clarence House, information was immediately leaked into the US media. So I've always said Harry's never going to be able to do that. But we now have categorical proof that he leaked this critical meeting, that he and Meghan leaked this critical meeting to the Mail on Sunday and Charlotte Griffiths, a journalist who at the same time they were suing, which is not only totally twisted, it's totally bizarre, but then they lied about it, Rafe, and tried to blame King Charles. So I just put it to you, Rafe, that surely enough is enough now. And if the king, and I know you hate criticizing the king, but he can't go through, Rafe, with a meeting with Harry this week. He just cannot. Want the real story behind the headlines? Subscribe to Dan Wootton Outspoken for daily updates you won't get anywhere else. Join us today. It's free.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's quite clear. This is extremely serious. I mean, they once again expose themselves as immense hypocrites. You wonder whether this is something pathological, that Prince Harry simply can't stop himself, or is it Meghan saying that this is what we must do? I mean, I've been to the Royal Overseas League many times. It's the balcony where you sit on there. It's a huge place. That's the only place where you can really be seen by the public. So who was it who decided to sit out on that tiny balcony when there are so many other places to sit for the first thing? Look, trust has been completely destroyed between Harry and his family. There was an attempt, a very magnanimous gesture by the king to extend an olive branch by inviting him to stay at Buckingham Palace. That, of course, we all know what happened there, where Harry replied too late, and then he declined and then changed his mind. And all that became public as well, of course, in a very unfair way, with the Sussexes claiming that they had their invitation withdrawn, which wasn't true. So it's already been damaged. That attempt at rapprochement has already been set back, and now you get these revelations. I mean, it seems to me as if they are as far apart as ever, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if certainly the Prince of Wales was advising his father along similar lines and saying, well, look, he clearly, for all of the talk he has about wanting to reconcile with his family, he's actually shown no real, true, deep down conviction that that's what he wants to do.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Rafe. I mean, seriously, the fact that he will actually work with newspapers and leak private information to newspapers who, at the same time he is trying to destroy and trying to make out to the public, are so morally reprehensible that they should not even be in business, proves to me, once again, and you know that I've been very hot on this for a number of years, that Harry and Meghan, you cannot trust a word that they say, because they will say one thing in public, Rafe, when it suits them politically, but then act in a completely different way behind the scenes. What's most extraordinary today, Rafe, is that we did get the briefings to the newspapers, which I still think give Harry and his team far too much credence in terms of how he is going to cope with this court loss. And I do think it is just worth reminding everyone, Rafe, this is like not just this is not like, oh, you lost a case. Harry had made this his life's mission, okay? And it wasn't like a split decision. It was a total thumping by Justice Nicklin. But yet he's briefing to the Daily Telegraph that he just thinks that he can keep calm and carry on and focus on his charity work now, which to me just feels totally, totally delusional. But the Daily Telegraph's Victoria Ward, who is their deputy royal editor and is the person who gets all of the contact from Harry and Meghan's team, says that he does plan to do just that. A bullish Prince Harry has just pledged to put the defeat behind him and shift his focus to his charity work. They report that the Duke has not discussed whether to appeal the verdict with David Sherborne, his barrister, and is not expected to have any further contact with him this week. One source said he was determined not to let the ruling further overshadow his charity engagements. He was unlikely to spend any more time assessing his next steps until he returned home. The Duke has 21 days to ask the court for permission to appeal, so there is plenty of time for him to sit down and absorb it all when this week's work is behind him. Plans to deliver a victory statement, which were being thrashed out right up until the ruling was made public, was swiftly shelved. The plan to have both print and broadcast media at an Invictus engagement that took place at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea on Wednesday, had already been abandoned. The Duke was originally expected to be joined by his wife, the Duchess of Sussex, for private meetings and a reception involving Chelsea pensioners before he decided it was unsafe for her and the children to travel to London without any police protection. The visit was also due to be covered by the media, but at lunchtime on Tuesday, the plan changed. A source insisted it was because of the extreme heat forecast and the lack of shade in the hospital grounds, which meant the public element of the job, meeting veterans, had to be shelved. In the event, the Duke attended a series of private meetings before joining a strategy session with former Invictus Games hosts and partners. There were no reporters present and just an Invictus photographer to capture the moment for posterity. Today, he was back in the public eye, of course, and then on Friday, he will be met with the gaggle of photographers, an event marking the one-year countdown to next year's Invictus Games. But Rafe, in all seriousness, the only question that I am hearing asked now with people involved in the Invictus Games is for how long Prince Harry can actually even be connected to this organisation that, yes, he did found, but he founded it when he was a member of the royal family, and his constant terrible headlines are actually now posing a reputational threat to this charity.
Yeah, and of course, he's lost association with so many other of the foundations and projects that he launched. They've all fallen around him in tatters, and this is all that he has left. And, he's clinging to it as if it's a life buoy, because it's essentially the only thing keeping him and keeping his reputation afloat. I mean, let's be clear here. He has suffered the most devastating of defeats, an immense humiliation at the hands of the British legal system. It must be gnawing at him. He's putting on a brave face because his PR team have told him to put on a brave face. But you can bet your bottom dollar that media presence would have been there at the Royal Hospital Chelsea if he had won that case. He would have been smiling like a Cheshire cat.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of,
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of,
And that's why he wanted to stay in Buckingham Palace, Rafe. I find that so despicable. He actually wanted to deliver his victory statement or film something from within Buckingham Palace. I mean, that is just so bad. Rafe, can I ask you what you think about Meghan's disappearing act, though? Because the one thing that you will say about Prince Harry is that he is always there for that woman, no matter what terrible things she does. I mean, I think of the example of her giving, this moment. Do you remember that? When she sort of mocked her curtsy to the late Queen, and Harry just had to sit there and shut up. And he was clearly horrified, but it's, he sort of supports his wife through all of these things. And yet, Rafe, have you noticed that any time the chips are down and that he's in deep trouble or he's being criticised, she makes herself scarce? And look, she may well fly in overnight because remember, they have to do this Althorpe filming at Althorpe for a documentary that they've got planned about the 30th anniversary of Princess Diana's death. But I would argue, Rafe, that she needed to be there for him earlier this week because this is a man who has just suffered a defeat which is really going to change the course of his life. That is how significant, in my view, the defeat by the Daily Mail was. It was so consequential. And she's just not there, Rafe. What do you think that says about her?
Well, she's a fair weather wife, isn't she? She's only there for the good days. She's only there when the sun is shining. When the clouds form, she rushes off. Her California character can't deal with cloudy skies. I'll go back to that in a moment. But can you imagine? Because when he lost that case, he attacked the judges. He attacked his father's judges. It's the king's law, and he undermined the rule of law by calling it a whitewash. Imagine if he had said that from within Buckingham Palace. Let's just
oh
put
my
that
God, I know. No, but it's such an important point. I keep thinking about that because it's the king's court that he and Rafe, and again, just before we go back to the Meghan thing, that is why I think he can no longer be a councillor of state. I know that you think he should stay in the line of succession, but like a councillor of state. Tell me if I'm wrong, Rafe, because you're the expert on this stuff. But a councillor of state is there to effectively sign off laws and, do official duties on behalf of the king if the king is incapacitated in some way. So how on earth can you have someone as a councillor of state who is criticising the king's own judiciary?
He's not a councillor of state because you have to be living in the United Kingdom for that to happen, and he's living abroad. So essentially, he's already removed himself from being a councillor of state. So it's nothing more. It's even less than a formality that he's listed as such. But yes.
But sorry, I interrupted your point on Meghan.
Yes, and well, we've seen this with Meghan before. Do you remember what happened when he went when Spare was published and when it began to fall around his ears? When he kept talking about his frozen todger and his chapstick reminding him of his mother when he rubbed it on there, she was nowhere to be seen. You have to remember that Meghan always thinks about herself. She married him in order to advance her own social status and her own social career. She wanted to be a Martha Stewart, and she's achieved what she achieved on the back of Prince Harry. This has always been a marriage in which there's the key target, the key beneficiary was Meghan, and Harry was simply there to officiate for her to become what she wanted to become. And the proof is in the pudding. And we know full well, of course, all the stories we get about her not wanting to be in the UK because of the security issues and so forth. She could have come here so many times anonymously. The Queen used to go to the Kentucky Derby to visit her friends who were horse breeders there privately. Prince Edward used to go to Canada and Australia on private visits. We were none the wiser. There is no reason Harry, Meghan and the kids couldn't have gone on a private jet to
Balmoral. William and
Catherine
go on their private family holidays even now. And Rafe, think that's even now in the age of social media where people have smartphones and everything, they still go on these holidays. They're never pictured. It's totally private. And Harry and Meghan don't want to do that because I think they're trying to play the king to force him into giving them security. Rafe, another thing that's been coming up this week is this nickname within the palaces and the reference to the fact that Harry and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor are now described as the Dukes of Hazzard. Indeed, Tom Sykes of the Royalist Substack, his new book is actually going to be called The Dukes of Hazzard. But Kate Mancy, the assistant editor of The Times, reports today, Rafe, Palace insiders refer to Harry and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as the Dukes of Hazzard, the only official sounding title still attached to the king's disgraced brother, who was stripped of his titles of Prince and Duke of York last year. Courtiers saw the king's patience snap again last weekend over Harry. On Monday morning, breaking news alerts quoted the prince's spokesman, who confirmed that Harry had accepted an offer to stay at Buckingham Palace. Not true, said palace officials moments later. Any reporters who get updates from the disappearing messages on Harry's spokesman's WhatsApp group must have suffered from whiplash. Harry is Captain Chaos, says one bewildered observer. One source even suggested that Harry's spokesman's statement that the Duke would stay at Buckingham Palace may have been a trap designed to force the palace into coming good on the offer for the sake of appearances. But Charles was not for turning. Over the weekend, the suggestion that the Duke would deliver an on-camera reaction from an undisclosed location set alarm bells through the palace. If Harry, and this is the point that you were making, Rafe, delivered an excoriating attack on the King's courts from under the sovereign's roof, it could prove embarrassing for Charles. Now, we've discussed that, Rafe, but the thing that I just wanted to point out on this piece, because remember, this is the Times, it's the newspaper of record, Kate Mancy is a senior figure in the Royal Rota and is briefed a lot by Buckingham Palace. And the thing that really shocked me here, but I think they're correct, by the way, I think it's completely true, is that the reason Prince Harry released that public statement on Monday saying, yep, I'm going to stay at the palace, knowing full well that that visit had already been rejected, was to effectively use the media to pressure King Charles into reversing his decision. And don't you just think, Rafe, that is so cretinous? And again, here we have a man who's constantly moaning about the media, but he will use the media to try and shame and bully his own father. I just think it's the lowest of the low.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's crass and it's so obvious. I mean, these are mind games and attempts at manipulation, which are so easy to see through. I mean, no, you don't have to be, a dunce at the royal household not to see what his game is. But I mean, what is his long game? I mean, it's also such a short-termist thing. If you really want to heal things with your father, if you want to show that there's trust there and build things back to whatever, who knows, a balcony appearance in 10 years or whatever the long game is, this is not how you achieve it. And let's remember what happened here. He went into a long sulk because Ravek, who decide whether he gets full security or not, they decided he wouldn't get security during this visit. And so then rather than respond to the kind invitation of his father to stay at Buckingham Palace, rather than respond by the end of last week as he was told, he went into this long strop. And then a day after the deadline, he then declined the invitation. And then a few hours later, he accepted the invitation, by which point he was told it was too late. But then he releases this statement as well. I mean, it's absolutely jaw-dropping to think that he thought this strategy would, A, work, and B, that it would somehow wouldn't interrupt a chance of a reconciliation.
Rafe, I also think Prince Harry is delusional to just believe he can move on from this court case, because I think it's really important to point out, Rafe, exactly what he was trying to do, because it was genuinely about shutting down the Daily Mail, genuinely about ushering in a sort of Leveson 2, which would crack down on all of us, censor social media. We've already seen the British government is attempting to do that, take over the algorithm, meaning that channels like Outspoken are pushed down in order to give the BBC and Woke ITV and Sly News this sort of prominence, just as people turn off those broadcasters. And by the way, that's why I just beg of everyone, please do subscribe right now to YouTube. It's to Outspoken on YouTube, because it's completely free to do so, but we have to try and beat the algorithm. And please try and join us on Substack too, which is www.outspoken.live, because that way you get all of our content directly and we're not reliant on an algorithm there. But it's really terrifying what's going on. But Camilla Tominey of the Daily Telegraph, Rafe, actually made a very good point that this loss is good news on that front for the British public, because it means that it's less likely that this intense regulation of the British media will be able to happen. So I'll get your reaction, but I just want you to watch what she's had to say on this, Rafe.
Everyone's understandably focusing on Prince Harry losing this court case against associated newspapers, but we need to look at the bigger picture here. This is also a great loss for those involved in Hacked Off, the campaign group that is trying to introduce state regulation of the press. We know that was the ultimate aim because Leveson 2.0 was mentioned no less than 55 times by the complainant's lawyer, David Sherborne. So this isn't just a victory for freedom of the press, but also for the British public, because without newspapers reporting, without fear or favour, then there is no accountability for the rich and famous. You have to remember that it was newspapers that broke the story of, say, the expenses scandal, of Angela Rayner not paying enough stamp duty, of, indeed, the recent revelations surrounding Nigel Farage.
Rafe, do you think she's got a point?
She has a point, and certainly it's a very bad day for Hacked Off, and it certainly doesn't mean we're going to have another Leveson 2. But make no mistake, there are dark days ahead for all of us in the media and all people who like to watch independent media. It's already the case that the Telegraph has now been bought by a massive company internationally, which is far more left-wing and centrist than the Telegraph has been historically. It's the case now that the Spectator, the editor there, is now Michael Gove, a man who won't apologise for the Boris wave, the greatest act of damage to this country probably in 1,000 years. So even the print media here, which you could once rely on, has already been bought up by elements that weren't as traditional as they have been in the past. And then, of course, you've got a government with 3 years left which is basically going to try to strangle independent media as much as it can by basically thwarting the algorithm, prioritizing the legacy media, BBC, Channel 4 will now get priority over Outspoken, over the New Culture Forum in people's feeds. You've got the Online Safety Act. You've got every app, and we are again the canary in the coal mine, because no other country in the Western world has got a hatred for free speech as you're seeing being exercised by our democratically elected government. We've now become the pariah amongst the West for free speech nations, which is all the more painful given that free speech was born in England. So yes, this is a minor setback for them, but their agenda is still clear. Then the key thing driving all of this is to silence the truth tellers.
Absolutely. And Rafe, in terms of the destruction of the UK, getting so much feedback in from our outspoken audience today.
This video is for news reporting, commentary, and educational purposes. The views expressed are based on publicly available information and personal analysis. We strive for accuracy but encourage viewers to verify information through official sources.